Hi, Harriet. Have you ever been paid to be hate crimed? Well, I have, so let me tell you about it. Okay, so yesterday I was at work serving this family that was sitting there like the three wise men. And then all of a sudden, out of the mom's mouth, I hear the trigger words, non-binary and gender fluid. Oop! And court is in session, and my ears are turned on. Let's do this. So basically, the mom was trying to explain to the dad what it meant to be non-binary or gender fluid. After a few minutes go by, the dad responds in the same way that every guy that looks like him would and says, you know, I understand where they're coming from, but if you're biologically a male or a female, that's what you are. And then I'm standing there.
Based.
On display. So after a little bit of time, I march up to my colleague like I'm about to tattletale on a kid that just stole my toys. And she's like, yeah, I hate to tell you, the entire time they have been referring to you as he or him. Great. So that adds a little bit of insult to injury. And before you ask, no, they didn't tip well. Anyway, thank you.
Babe, is the hate crime in the room with us right now? Because I just listened to your whole little rant. I listened to you popping off. And the part where a hate crime happened, my ears must have slipped off. My attention must have dropped for that minute. Maybe I'll watch it back and I'll check. Nope. Still no hate crime. I mean, this is so offensive to falsely claim to have been the victim of a hate crime at work when you eavesdropped on people, basically, who didn't even say anything to you and then got upset by words that were said about you and your imaginary identity. That is not a hate crime. And that is so deeply insulting to suggest otherwise to the actual victims of hate crimes, people who've had the crap beat out of them while slurs are hurled at them, gay people who've been brutalized just because of who they are or who they love, or black people or minorities who've been attacked by actual vicious racists in violent ways, who've had their stores vandalized and spray painted with slurs. Oh, you heard words that hurt your fifis at work. Get a grip. Oh my gosh, that is ridiculous and offensive and just really, really reprehensible to go claim that. And look, they're allowed to have an opinion on non-binary and think that it's not legitimate. It's a free country. They can think that. They can say it. They weren't rude to you. You went and eavesdropped on them and then got mad about what you heard, and that's kind of your own fault. They didn't say anything disrespectful to you. It doesn't sound like it, at least. And I'm sorry they didn't tip well, but maybe you weren't giving the best service, if I had to guess. I mean, some people really do just want to be victims. I mean, that mentality is so clear from this video, and I just can't relate to it at all. I just have no respect for that approach of actually wanting to be victimized, so much so that you would lie and steal valor or steal sympathy from real victims of hate crime to come on the internet and say you were hate crimed at work when you literally weren't. And also, how did you think this was going to go for you? Did you think people were going to hear this story and come out of it thinking that you were the good guy? Because I didn't. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm just cynical. Maybe I'm cold-hearted. I have no heart. Y'all have to let me know in the comments. But like, I lost sympathy for you listening to this video. I really did. This person is a female. So it's actually funny because I think these people were even confused about the sex of this individual and thought this was a male person. This person, to me at least, is clearly a female. And what I will say is this is a free country. You are free to identify as non-binary and call yourself whatever you like. And I will defend to the death your right to say that, even though I think it's nonsensical. I think it's incoherent. I think it relies on faulty sex stereotypes and gender roles that are outdated and actually kind of sexist. I'll defend your right to say it and call yourself whatever you like, but you do not have a right to force other people to go along with it and buy into it, because the freedom that protects your right to call yourself non-binary, call yourself they, them, also protects their freedom to not call you that. And they don't have to. And by choosing to not do so, they are not brutalizing you or committing any sort of crime against you, let alone a hate crime. In fact, if you were really secure in your identity, you wouldn't be desperate for the validation of strangers. And the fact that you are clearly so desperate suggests to me that you might actually know in your heart that non-binary isn't a real or legitimate concept and isn't actually coherent. What do you guys think? Did you actually feel sympathetic for this woman? Or like me, do you think she's basically doing cultural appropriation for hate crimes and insulting actual victims? Let me know in the comments, and do hit that like button to reward my suffering, because Gosh, I definitely just lost some serious brain cells from listening to that. Today, we're going to take a look at a video from a young woman explaining a new woke sexuality that just dropped, fictosexual, which apparently is when you have relationships with fictional characters. Now, before I play the video, I do want to tell you guys, this young woman is autistic and she does not deserve any bullying or ridicule. I want to talk about the idea here and the fact that this stuff is being spread to impressionable young people, but please treat her with empathy and kindness. Do not ridicule her or demean her in any way. Now let's take a listen to this video.
The next thing I want to talk about is the different levels of loving fictional characters. Some people who are non-fictosexual just have a crush on a fictional character as a joke. It's just something they like to joke about, and like that's just kind of how fictional character crushes are sometimes. But fictosexuality goes deeper than that. There are people like myself who have relationships with fictional characters that are very deep and meaningful. And for example, my relationship with Fizzarali from Hell of a Boss, he has, even though I'm still struggling in life, because life is hard for everybody, I have such a deep connection to him, and he has inspired me to become a better person and do things that I never thought I would do in my life. So yes, there are different levels to loving fictional characters, and I feel like being fictosexual is when you just truly feel some sort of love, as opposed to it just being, oh, I have a crush on a fictional character just because they're hot or cool or trendy or stuff like that.
So again, I do want to emphasize that I don't want any bullying or harassment towards this young woman who does say in her profile that she has autism, and I do believe is a victim here who's been led astray by nonsense gobbledygook being spread on TikTok, not somebody who we should be ridiculing or bullying. So if I do see anybody doing that in the comments, I will delete it, but please don't do that. First and foremost, I've got to say, stop. Stop adding fake, made-up things that aren't real and aren't legitimate to the LGBT acronym and the community. You are not helping. You are dragging us all down with your nonsense. Fictosexuality is not a sexual orientation. You cannot have a relationship with something that does not exist. You do not have a relationship with a fictional character, because a relationship takes two. It takes two people. It has to involve another party. And in this case, your other party is something that literally by definition does not exist and is not real. It is okay to have a crush on a fictional character, I guess, or whatever. But if you actually find yourself developing this kind of parasocial relationship, it's not really a relationship, hence the parasocial qualifier, to something that isn't real, well, we should be working on that. Right? And I say this with empathy, not scorn, but we should be working on that and see, why aren't you able to connect with people in real life? What's going wrong? And how can we help you build a true bond and relationship, which is one of the beautiful parts of life, and not have a parasocial relationship with somebody who doesn't exist and can't actually support you, can't actually love you back. Like, that is not a viable alternative. It's not a good alternative. And it is absolutely not a legitimate orientation or lifestyle to be placed on par with being gay or being lesbian or being bisexual or what have you. Absolutely not. And we do have to talk about the fact that when we come across this kind of nonsensical thing on TikTok, very often the person who has fallen prey to it is an autistic person. And that to me demonstrates one of the harms of the woke nonsense being spread on TikTok, is that they are pushing these incoherent ideological notions onto people who maybe are more likely to glom onto them and be led astray by them because of something like autism or something like an in a different context, a unsupportive home life, or vulnerable people are being targeted with these messages and led astray. And that is really, really concerning to me. There's also something about this that just gives wanting to be included. Online culture is so broken that it really does valorize victimhood. It really has made identification or belonging in some sort of victim group a form of social currency, so much so that people are trying to stretch their identities into somehow being marginalized or part of this category of LGBTQ when they're actually not. So like this young woman is clearly attracted to male characters. So this is just a straight young woman, and that is perfectly okay. it is okay to be heterosexual. But in these hyper online spaces, most of the real world is still not like this, but in these hyper online spaces, it is trendy or cool to be a part of some marginalized identity. So because you have that, of course, you know, being a victim in any way or being a part of one of these groups shouldn't be stigmatized, but it also shouldn't be valorized. It shouldn't be celebrated. It should just be a value neutral thing. But because these online spaces have rewarded this stuff and have made it cool and trendy and fashionable and even hierarchical in terms of who should speak on certain things and all of this, what you have is people trying to opt in or stretch their identities to be marginalized. And you end up in absurd places like this, where straight women are somehow inventing new sexualities to somehow be part of the alphabet mafia. Like, no, this needs to stop. This is not a sign of a healthy online ecosystem or culture. It is just not. Again, nothing but love to this young woman. I hope she can kind of realize that this isn't something to be doubling down on like this, and also that it's harmful to spread it to others. But I'm sending her love, and I really do feel bad for all the young people who are being hopelessly confused on this app. You guys let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you identify as fictosexual? And do you know any young people who have been kind of led astray by this nonsense online? Let me know in the comments. Today, one TikToker is going to explain to us why the individuals who got caught up in the chase glitch and started taking advantage of a loophole that was spreading online to get free money after writing themselves fake checks and then depositing them at Chase ATMs, those people are actually the victims we should feel bad for, at least according to this TikToker. So let's hear him out and see what he had to say.
Alright, maybe this is a hot take, but I actually think that the Chase money glitch is really sad, and people making videos about it, laughing about how so many people just ruined their lives is really weird, because let's think about who is probably affected by this. Is it the people that have financial literacy that came with lots of education and are business majors and finally just thought they could skip the line and get some money? No, it's people who don't have any money or any means of income. They might be English second language, they might be mentally disabled, they might be living in poor areas, they might be in food deserts, they might be like extremely religious due to lack of having support needs met any other way, and so they are thinking this is a miracle. So they just went into what is causing so much of us to be so stressed about student debt equivalent, but it's just debt for needing to have money and thinking that they're getting a break finally for once. So I don't think that we should be mad and laughing at people for being dumb. I think that we should feel bad that this is like entrapment and that 2 million people just got like disenfranchised by a bank's mistake. Keep looking that boot.
Wow. So there's a lot to unpack here, but a couple things. Personally, I don't feel too bad for the people who committed check fraud, who knowingly wrote checks that they knew were fraudulent. Because the whole glitch was that you write yourself a check for a large amount of money, and then you, or if otherwise a fake check, then you deposit it and get an advance on the deposit before it clears from the ATM. So you knowingly did something dishonest to get money you don't actually have out of a bank, and now we're supposed to feel bad for you. Look, I understand people have different levels of financial literacy, and not everybody has access to, you know, sophisticated investment strategies and financial management, all this stuff, but everyone should have the common sense to know that that is probably illegal and definitely immoral to write checks you know aren't real, that you don't actually have the money to back up. That's just common sense. You don't need to have education to understand that. And I think tons of people without much education, or who are low socioeconomic status, or who are members of any of the groups he just mentioned, are still perfectly capable and smart enough to realize that you can't do that. And it's actually kind of condescending to say, well, they can't know any better. They're too uneducated. Just because somebody didn't go to college doesn't mean they're a idiot, right? Doesn't mean they have no common sense. In fact, a lot of them have more common sense than people with college degrees these days. So I do push back on this notion. I don't feel a particularly large amount of sympathy for people who committed basic check fraud in the name of a TikTok trend because they just saw influencers doing something and then copied them. Can't say that really pulls at my heartstrings, to be honest with you. Out of all the people in the world who are being sent to jail for things that probably shouldn't even be crimes, if they get in trouble, like, that's not going to keep me up at night. Maybe I'm heartless. Maybe I'm cruel. Maybe I just don't have sympathy, whatever. Yeah, I don't. I don't have that much sympathy for them. I mean, you should know that there's no such thing as free money. If somebody's just offering you $30K free money out of thin air with no strings attached, any person should have the common sense to know that that's probably too good to be true, right? That doesn't make sense. And I do have to touch on this truly bizarre notion that Chase engaged in entrapment, or that there was even a glitch at all. No, babe. Chase was offering a benefit to customers that they're basically saying, we trust you guys, you're our customers. If you cash a check or if you deposit a check, we'll give you an advance on it, even though it hasn't cleared yet, because you can be trusted with that. We want you to have your money quicker. Turns out they were dumb. They were naive. They were too trusting of the public, but they weren't entrapping people purposefully. This hasn't been good for Chase Bank. This has been a PR nightmare for them, and they've got to go after people and claw all this money back and deal with law enforcement. This isn't something they wanted to do. They were trying to be helpful to customers and offer them a perk that then got exploited by internet scammers and hoaxsters. So do not say that Chase Bank entrapped people. That is ridiculous, both because anybody with common sense should have known this wasn't allowed, and because Chase was actually trying to do something helpful to their customers and it just backfired. So they weren't entrapping anybody. Some people, especially on TikTok, especially left-wing people, really, they seem to only be able to view the world in these very firm shades of black and white. Corporations are bad and working class people are good. So anything that happens, the corporation must be in the wrong. No, babe. The real world is more complicated than that. Corporations do a lot of shady stuff, and I call them out, and I criticize different stuff related to corporations all the time. But just because some people are rich and powerful and other people are less powerful, the intersectional woke worldview was like, well, obviously, because of these power imbalances, this is the marginalized group. No, sometimes the people lower down in the power spectrum are the ones making the bad decision and doing the wrong thing. And that's okay to acknowledge and admit. The real world is complicated. It's not as simple as good guys versus bad guys, working class versus super rich CEOs, greedy, evil people. No, in fact, even low-income people, even people in low socioeconomic classes should have the common sense to know not to write or cash checks they don't actually know, that they know are not real. Like, that's just common sense 101. And corporations are not doing something wrong by clawing money back when people try to rip them off. I'm sorry, they're just not. In fact, they're doing something good and moral and just, because these hoaxsters and scammers for social media clout engaged in something that erodes the trust and the accountability that actually allows our financial system to exist. And they tried to hijack the system, and many of them probably are going to get away with it, but at least some of them are being held accountable, and they are not victims we should feel bad for. No, I'm sorry. I'm not buying it. They are people who made dumb choices and are now dealing with the consequences. And I will not be breaking out the violin or any tears for them anytime soon. Do you guys agree, or do you think I'm being a little heartless and you guys do have some sympathy for these people? Let me know in the comments below, and do hit that like button to reward my suffering, because handling this, watching these stupid videos really does take its toll on me, y'all. It really does. Today, this TikToker's little skit is incredibly condescending towards conservatives, building up a straw man, essentially suggesting that people who aren't progressive just don't care about helping people. Let's take a look at this video, and try not to pull your hair out too much, but it is kind of maddening stuff. The caption here is, when you have political positions based around helping others, and I'm already rolling my eyes so hard.
Medicare for all is socialism, so I don't really want to...
I don't know, man. I think it's a good thing that people should be able to afford medical care.
I also think free lunch in the schools is an abomination.
Oh, well, I don't know, man. I think it's a good thing that, kids get to eat.
Well, another issue is that these are the same people that think college should be affordable.
Can't really agree with you there, man. I gotta say that I think it's important to get an education that's affordable. People should be able to go to school without having to worry about it.
These kids don't even learn there. They go there and protest things happening in the Middle East that they don't understand.
That's where I got to disagree with you there. I think ethnic cleansing and genocide are bad.
And let's not even talk about like the gay agenda that goes on there. Because hang on, wait. No, I think it's important.
What
is your opinion on the gay agenda that's pushed in college?
Okay.
I don't have it. I don't have an
No,
issue
I
with
don't
gay
think
people.
gay
I'm
marriage
just
is a
saying
bad
that
thing. Actually,
I think it should be
You
a
know,
state issue.
I really
on
feel
the
like,
state and
we're
local
not
level.
meeting,
I don't think the
eye to
federal
eye on
government
this.
has.
I think it's a pretty uncontroversial thing I'm suggesting.
Right,
here.
but it's a slippery slope because one day you're supporting gay marriage.
No,
and then the
I
next
don't.
minute
I don't think that's right either.
Well, in fairness, I don't think you know what you're talking about, and I don't think you are educated on the idiosyncrasies and the complexities of.
So this video was massively popular on TikTok with 187,000 likes, and the comments on this were really something. One person wrote, "How will these things be paid for? Money is made up, and we could just decide things don't cost that much." Bruh, that is genuinely terrifying. That thousands of people liked that comment. Babe, that would literally turn us into Zimbabwe or Venezuela. This has been tried, and it does not work. Another person says, "Do you really want less money?" I like quotes is what a conservative would say. And it said, yeah, if it helps folks, then absolutely, yeah. Easiest answer. You know you're free to donate your money now, right? To the government. They accept donations or to charities that help people. The question is whether people should have more of their money and their resources confiscated by force to be funneled into ineffective government programs. But you're free to help people, and you should. Many people do, but it's not that no one else wants to help people. Gosh. Another person said, "It's not politics at that point. It's values and character." Bruh. Oh my God. This whole thing makes me want to roll my eyes so hard. Because, so the argument here is that conservatives or Republicans or anybody who's not, on board with government control of our healthcare system via Medicare for all doesn't want affordable healthcare. No, we all want affordable healthcare. We have different ideas about the best policy solutions that get us to that point, okay? And we don't think that the government running a healthcare system is the solution. You'd have to more than double taxes to pay for it. And that's the thing. You're not making it more affordable. You're making it cost a lot, but just be paid through the taxes. So we can have that debate and discussion, but it's not like one, it's just magically affordable for everyone, and the other one is an expensive hellscape. That's not actually how it works. So it's just everyone wants good healthcare. We have different ideas about how to get there. So to say conservatives don't care about people affording healthcare, same thing with education. Conservatives or people on the right more broadly want affordable higher education. We have different ideas about how to get there, and we think that people should pay for it themselves because it is an investment that earns you $1 million more over your lifetime. So I think it's fair to have an adult pay their way themselves. It is way too expensive, and that's because of a lot of things, including massive federal subsidies, including huge administrative bloat that we should be working on to make it more affordable. I agree there, but it's not that we don't care about affordable education just because we don't want socialized. And we don't want it all paid for by taxes. Everyone else has to pay for your degree in fine arts and gender studies. Just because we disagree with that doesn't mean we don't care about freaking affordable education. It's a total straw man. And don't get me started on the free lunch in schools thing. Literally no one, 0 people, or maybe there's one out there somewhere. No one disagrees that schools should have free lunch programs for the needy. Right? Everywhere has that. And nobody's trying to take that away or defeat it or get rid of it. The debate that's happening in some places is that progressives and Democrats want to pass laws where every kid gets free school lunch, free as in paid for by the taxes and the school. I personally am not a huge fan of that because I think if you're a middle class or an upper class parent, you should pay for your own kid's lunch. Like, I support having those programs for the needy, but I don't see any reason why I should have to pay for my millionaire neighbor's kids to eat at school. Like, what? I wouldn't be paying for them to eat dinner. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. So that's the only debate that's happening, is whether it should be a universal thing or just for the needy. But literally no one is saying that poor kids shouldn't get food at school. Nobody. So again, it's just, they're not even engaging in any semblance of good faith with what the other side believes. And that's just so frustrating because this is why we're so divided and hopelessly divided as a country, because people talk past each other and they imagine that the other side believes stuff they don't actually believe. People on the right do this to the average Democrat when they say they're all just Marxist communists who love abortion or whatever. The reality is much more nuanced than that. But this is what the kind of thing you see on TikTok tends to be in this direction of just hopelessly strawmanning conservatives, Republicans, independents, moderates, anybody who's not a hardcore progressive, as if we literally want kids to starve, don't care that people have health insurance, don't want people to be able to get educated. Like, the list goes on. It's just not that simple. And it's just such a condescending and maddening thing to be spreading to millions of impressionable minds on the internet. Anyway, you guys let me know what you think of that video. Did it make you want to pull your hair out as much as it did for me? Let me know in the comments, and do hit that like button to reward my suffering, because that was a painful watch. It really was.
Men are the problem. Hear me out.
Oh?
Over the last few days, there have been very specific, horrific, and tragic incidents that have occurred that got me thinking about the root, and the root is male entitlement that then manifests into male violence. Now, there are separate and serious conversations that need to be had about white national domestic femicide, but at the root of it is male entitlement. Because while a 14-year-old boy who was just being investigated by the FBI just last year over allegations of wanting to pew-pew up a school would be gifted an AR-15 from his own father for Christmas is beyond me.
So, men are the problem is such a wild thing to say about the actions of one individual 14-year-old boy. I agree that the father giving him a gun in this context was insane and irresponsible and frankly potentially criminal behavior, and he's being investigated for that. So, I agree with that portion. Obviously, that's insane. But what any of this has to do with men as an entire category of people or of male entitlement? I mean, this was not some strong alpha male who'd been embodied by toxic masculinity. This was a traumatized, disturbed young teenage boy who had been really horrifically treated. Now, none of that, of course, justifies or explains his actions in any way, really. But it's like, the idea that this was rooted in men or masculinity is not substantiated based on what we know about the facts. And regardless, there's something sick about responding to the demented actions of an individual by immediately casting blame on an entire group of people. In any other context, we would really see this as divisive and wrong, right? If we saw one horrible shooting carried out by a black person, started talking about this is a black problem, people would be like, whoa, that is not okay and not fair to black people. They're all individuals. You can't hold them collective based on some immutable non-choice of a trait that they have in common. Well, the same thing is true for men. And it's not okay to demonize an entire group of people because of the actions of certain individuals. Now, is it true that men commit most of these atrocities? Yes. And I'm open to discussing why that might be, but we have to be careful to do so without demonizing entire groups or assigning collective guilt or blame for the actions of any one individual. That kind of thing is always wrong and always unfair, and it also always puts people on the defensive and divides people. So it's really disheartening to see this kind of thing just spreading all across TikTok. This individual did have more thoughts to share.
Bring up the fact that these young men are being coddled into entitlement. And when they can't have their way, they then manifest that into violence towards other people. And while I would like to emphasize that there is nobody more entitled than the white male who has been radicalized through the patriarchy, misogyny, online social media content, and propaganda, it is an issue across the board with male entitlement. The crime issue that is happening in Chicago and many other places is still a male entitlement issue. Because why are we all the victims to your irresponsible coping mechanisms, your unresolved trauma, and your suppressed emotions? And because men are the problem, men need to do a better job of coming up with the solutions.
So again, I am not totally closed off to the conversation about like what is leading some individual young men out of literally hundreds of millions of men to commit such depraved acts and atrocities. We should absolutely interrogate and investigate and try to remedy that in any way we can. But to then reach this conclusion that men are the problem and that men have some particular obligation to solve this, no, I don't. I bear as a man zero responsibility for this actions of some 14-year-old boy in Georgia. This is a insane connection that we would rightly cry bigoted and objectively hateful in any other context. I mean, this individual in the long video, which I didn't show you all of, talks about Chicago as an example and how you want to talk about how black people are responsible for all violence in Chicago, then they're still men. Like, no, you're missing the point. The point is that it would be deeply evil and racist and wrong to assign collective guilt to black people for the actions of a black drive-by shooter in Chicago. But you seem to be okay with doing the same thing to white men and not realizing the cognitive dissonance there. Like, it's not making sense. The math is not mathing. You are so inconsistent and engaging in the exact kind of behavior, the demonization of groups, that is so just sums up everything that's wrong with the modern identity politics cult and the collectivist worldview more broadly. Men don't have any particular burden to solve this issue. All of society does. We should all care equally about the horrific tragedies and the senseless loss of life of children and teachers. There's no particular obligation of some groups over others to care about this or solve this because of their immutable demographic traits. What are y'all saying? I understand that emotions run hot in the aftermath of this kind of tragedy. I really do. But the discourse about men and male identity, this is just one video of many on this app after this incident, is just shocking and deranged stuff. And of course, in a twist that should surprise no one, not only did some TikTokers blame men collectively, they also blamed white people and white men collectively for the actions of this one teenage boy who happened, I guess, yes, to be white. Let's take a listen to another one of these wild TikTok videos. By the way, guys, I'm not showing you random content from people with 5 followers. All the videos I'm showing you have hundreds of thousands of likes and millions of views. Very, very popular content. Let's take a look.
I'm sorry if you think it's too early to politicize what happened in Georgia yesterday, but I will not allow the NRA to dictate how I talk about this issue that is impacting all of us. The majority of school blank and mass blank that are happening across this country are being committed by white boys. So let me ask you this. If you're a parent, white women, what are we doing?
Excuse me? The text on screen says, this is a white problem. No, babe. No, it is not. White people as some nebulous collective doesn't even really exist, first of all, but have no responsibility for the actions of a handful of individuals out of hundreds of millions of people. That is demented logic. Again, that's like saying that black people collectively have some sort of responsibility for the actions of one drive-by black shooter in Chicago. No, they don't. We would rightfully call that racist and bigoted. It's not somehow different because you just swap out the race from black to white and apply the logic in a different situation. It's still the same ignorant and bigoted logic, babe. This is just such a divisive and irresponsible way to respond to these kinds of tragedies. But she continued as she started. Let's take a listen to more of her video.
Yes, this is 100% a pew-pew, access to pew-pew problem, but as a culture, we are raising violent human beings. The overexposure and glorification of violence in our households has to stop. You have got to get a hold of what we are showing, teaching, exposing our children to, and being better, more present parents, because this is a problem in white households. So if we are white parents, we have to do something about it.
Oh my. There's a lot to unpack here, but first off, her math is not mathing. She says this is 100% an access to guns problem, which it's not, and we can talk about that because decades ago we had ample access to firearms, but not the same degree of regular shootings, so clearly something else has changed. However, it can't simultaneously be 100% an access to guns problem and also a white people problem, because then it wouldn't be 100% an access to guns problem. Like, literally, your math is not mathing. Oh my goodness, the incoherence on display here is quite something. But of course, that doesn't stop millions of impressionable people on TikTok from lapping up this content. Gosh. But I just fundamentally reject this idea that white families have to do something about this because it's a white problem. No, we don't. It has nothing to do with us. Just because first off, white is a very vague and not really a category, but let's say that it is, for argument's sake. I have no responsibility. My family has nothing to do with the actions of some 14-year-old boy in Georgia. Nothing to do with us. And if you're saying we somehow have guilt or blame or responsibility for his actions because we share a skin pigment, then you, my friend, are doing racism. You're doing bigotry. You're doing guilt by association in a way that you would simply never apply to any other demographic group of people without immediately realizing that what you're saying is bigoted and ignorant. Individuals are responsible for their actions. This individual in Georgia's family is very much responsible for the reckless decisions they allegedly made and not seeing all the massive red flags that we've reportedly heard about. They're responsible. Random white families in other parts of the country are not. And that is a wild and just irresponsible allegation or suggestion to make. It's really giving, I'm one of the good white people. See, I am a white person, but I know that white people are bad and have so much work to do. Please like me. It's really pathetic to see white people who kind of flagellate themselves like this before the altar of woke identity politics, hoping to be successful and win the love of people who genuinely will hate you regardless and will demonize you regardless. Like, I don't know what you're going for here, but whatever it is, it's not working.